Data in a data frame will be in a structured, readable format. So to process or to analyze this data, we might need some transformation in its shape. Hello viewers, in this video, I'll walk you through some of the reshaping methods that are available in Pandas. These methods actually alters the representation of the data for further processing or for data summarization. Subscribe to my channel to get alerts on more videos on Python and data science. So some of the methods that I'll be covering in this video are pivot, pivot table, stack, unstack, meld, and wide to long. This is the data frame that I have. Though I have the required details in a readable format, I might need some summary from this data frame, like what is the minimum and the maximum age of the students in each section, or like I might also look for some summary on name based on roll number and section. So this is when the pivot and the pivot table methods will be used. Sometimes we'll be wondering on what is the difference between pivot and pivot table. So pivot method is only going to return us the reshaped data in the format that we want. We have an option to provide the index or the column values, and pivot method will provide the desired output. So in this example, I have given index equal to roll number, columns is section, and the values name. Pivot is going to fetch me the values based on roll number, and since the columns are going to be section, so it's going to retrieve me in two columns which are section 1 and section 2, because that is what I have in this data frame, and the values are going to be the name of the students in each section who are having these roll numbers. However, this method does not support the data aggregation, meaning we cannot use the pivot method to make use of the min, max or the other functions. So that is where the pivot table method comes into picture. In my example, I'm using the pivot table method to index on section, and the values are going to be age with the aggregate function as min. So in each section, what is the minimum age of the students is the data that will be retrieved out of this data frame. We also have an option to give more than one aggregate function by passing it in the dictionary format. In that case, I can get both min and the max age in the same result set. So the next method that we look at is the stack method. So this stack method reshapes the data frame from columns to index. Consider this data frame containing section, name, age, and address. Say I want the details of each student separately in a format of some column name and value. I can call the stack method to help me with this requirement. So for each value, it's going to retrieve me the column name followed by the value. So it's going to be section, section 1, name, Joe, age, 14, address, ADDR1. So this is how the stack method will display the data. One thing to note here is that I have not created any index in this data frame. Let's say I have an index on the section column. In that case, stack will display the data against each section. So against section 1, I'll get the details of name, age, address of each and every student, and then for section 2, I'll get the similar details. As in my previous example, let's say I've got the roll number column as well as part of the index. The data will be stacked considering two levels, meaning under each section, under roll number 1, what are the student details. So that is how stack is going to get me the data. Having understood about the stack method, let's get into the unstack method, which actually pivots a level of index labels. So in this data frame, I have a multi-index on section and roll number. Now I want to create a pivot based on either roll number or section index labels. So I have two levels here, 0 and 1. So 0 is for section and 1 is for roll number. So while calling the unstack method, I have an option to pass the level number or name. So if I call the unstack method by passing the level as 0, then the pivot will be created on the index which is section, and if I give it to be 1, then the pivot will be created based on roll number. Alternatively, I can also give the negative index as well, where -1 is for roll number and -2 for section. If I don't pass any level value, then the default is -1. So consider this example where I've just given unstack. The default is going to be -1. So in that case, -1 is for roll number. So I'm getting a pivot with the columns as roll number, and against each roll number, I'm getting the details of the students, age and address. If I give level to be 0, then it is going to be based on section because the level 0 is on the index section. I can also give the index name here where I can say level equal to section rather than giving 0. The other way to give the level is by passing the negative index. So the section is having the negative index as -2. So if I give -2, again the pivot will be on section. Similarly, unstack with the level equal to roll number or level equal to -1 is going to create a pivot with the columns as roll number. And this is how my output will look like. The other methods that we look into are the melt and the wide to long. Melt method will reshape the data frame from wide to long format where one or more columns are the identifier variables while the other columns are the value variables or measured variables. This is my data frame containing section, roll number, name, age and address. If I call the melt method on this data frame, then each column and its corresponding value will be melted into individual rows. The melt method will create individual rows such as section, section 1, section, section 2 and so on. This is the example where I have not defined any index in my data frame. Say I have to fetch the values based on a particular column, say name, and I do not want all the columns to be melted. Rather, I want only selected columns like section and age to be melted. In that case, I can use the optional parameters in melt method, which are id wheres, value wheres and var name. So id wheres is nothing but the identifier variables, value wheres is the value variable and var name is the variable name. Since I want the values to be displayed against the name column, I will give id wheres to be name, and for each of these names I want individual rows on section and age. So I'll give value as to be section and age. And this is going to be the output of the print statement where against each name I have the details of the section and the age. By default, the column name will be the variable and the value. But I have an option to change the column name with the help of var name parameter. So if I give var name to be call name, or it can be any name. So in this print statement, you can see that the column name is call underscore name, which I have specified here in this var name. We also have another optional parameter, which is value name. The values that will get displayed in my output will hold this column name, which is the details, which I have specified under value underscore name. Wide to long also converts a data frame to a long format. This method is similar to melt method, but it is very useful when we have group columns, meaning I might have columns in my data frame like subject 1, subject 2, subject 3 and so on. Or I might have columns with a naming convention like year 2020, year 2021 or year 2022. So in that case, I want to melt only the subjects or the year columns by keeping the other column names intact, for which I'll use this wide to long method. Consider this data frame where I have two columns, subject 1 and subject 2, and I want to extract the columns which have subject in the column name. So I'll use the parameter which is called the stub names to specify the columns that start with subject. So the text that is following this stub name will be placed as the row values, meaning I have the subject 1 and subject 2. So since I give stub names to be subject, under this subjects I'll have values as 1 and 2, which are nothing but the values from this subject 1 and subject 2. and all other data frame columns are populated in this result set. There are other two parameters which are I and j. So I contains the list of columns to be used as ID variables. I'm using name here as the ID variable, so name appears first in the result. J is the name of the sub observation variable, which is the name that we want to give. So I give J to be subjects. So that is why I am seeing the column name to be subjects here, followed by the values. I can also change it to be something like subject underscore details, and that will be my column name in my output. These are some of the reshaping methods that are available in Pandas. Hope you have got a clear picture of each of these methods.